Hello and welcome to another edition of Pop and Scott Talk Baseball. Welcome to everyone to exciting part of the season. We got a first place fight in the American League. Really kind of two spots because Cleveland's not running away clearly, but we definitely have one playoff spot in contention, and we'll talk more about that in this episode. I'm going to depend heavy on my dad because I was out of town for the last 3 days. Partly at his house, but I was still doing running around at a wedding and rehearsal dinners and all of that stuff. That's why I'm nice and trimmed up this weekend. So, what do you got for us, Dad?
Well, the main thing I did was I promised last week that I'd do my homework, so I've got the schedule. The regular season schedule ends on the 29th, and I've got all the schedules of the pertinent teams, but I'm going to go over the standings first before I do the schedules because I think that'll lead into it. Then there's some other news. First of all, the Mets, they lost Jeff McNeil with a broken wrist. He's out for the next 4 weeks.
I did not know
at least until the end of the regular season. So they brought in the singer Iglesias to play second base, and he made a spectacular play today and turned a double play.
Well, he's better at second than McNeil.
And in Atlanta today or yesterday acquired Kevin Biggio from San Francisco. He's only hitting 187, but they're down to playing bat boys. So anyway, the reason Atlanta is still winning is that their starting pitching has allowed 3 runs or less in the last 25 games. All right, let's look at the standings before we do anything else.
All right.
In the East of the American League, the New York Yankees, as of this morning, had a half-game lead on Baltimore, but the Orioles have already lost 2-0. They cannot score. They got shut out by Tampa again, 2-0. So they're down 1 game because the Yankees are still playing. In the Central, Cleveland has a 3.5-game lead on Kansas City and 5 over Minnesota. So Minnesota's got to win a lot of games to make that up, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do it in a few weeks. In the West, the Stros have jumped out to a 5.5 lead on Seattle. So Seattle probably won't make the playoffs at all because they won't win enough to make the wild card. In the National League, the Phillies, who are lost yesterday to Miami and we're losing in the top of the 9th today, 10-0, are up 7 on the Mets and 8 on Atlanta. Milwaukee's up 10 on St. Louis and the Cubs. The Cubs were rolling, and then they had to play the Yankees. They lost 2 in a row, got shut out twice. The Dodgers have a 5-game lead on the San Diego Padres and 6.5 on Arizona. In the wild card, in the American League, it's the O's, Kansas City, and Minnesota. Red Sox are 4 back, Seattle and Detroit 4.5. In the National League, it's San Diego, Arizona, and the Mets, who have gone 9-1 in their last 10 games. And I think they're winning today, but I'm not sure. And Atlanta is 1 game back. Now, remember a few weeks ago, I said Atlanta's not going to make the playoffs.
So let me ask you, by any chance, I know you saw, do you have, because I talked to you Friday about this, the Mets are, and everybody, if Arizona they're losing some games here.
See, that's my point. That's what I was going to say, because I've been saying all along Atlanta wasn't going to make the playoffs because of all the injuries. I don't care how good their pitching is. You got to score runs. So I thought Atlanta still got a shot to make it because Arizona and San Diego both lost yesterday.
Right.
And Arizona's playing Houston, which is hot right now.
Right.
So there's a chance Atlanta might still make the playoffs by default because Arizona and San Diego can't.
Right. So it looks like Arizona's the one that was really in kind of in the wrong direction. Right
now. They're not scoring runs. They're not scoring runs at all. But
and they do have Ketel Marte back. they're just playing tougher teams right now.
Well, Houston scored 11 on them last night. So but anyway, that's
Framber.
If Atlanta makes the playoffs, it's because Arizona didn't.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't. I stand by what I said though a few weeks ago.
I agree, but I mean, even with their injuries, like I said, the Mets have just gotten hot at the right stuff. Francisco Lindor, second half is playing MVP baseball. He's not going to win it, but he is. And
well, if you go back and look at at some of our shows from last year at this time, when we had about a month, 6 weeks left in the season, and these teams had 5 games to make up and all that, all of a sudden they did it.
Mm-hmm.
A few teams did it, but I don't see it this year. But you never know, because last year I didn't expect it either.
I'm also looking, and when you were sitting here telling me this, the Phillies have been going up and down, but I think this next few weeks is going to be telling on the last few years, the teams that have been on the up going into the playoffs. Because you remember last year, Braves struggled a little bit right before the playoffs as well. And
so did Baltimore.
Right. And it feels like that carries over. It's a carryover into the playoffs. And that's what I'm kind of looking at right now. I want to see what teams.
Well, the other thing with the Phillies, with a lot of these teams, they got a 75-game lead.
Right.
I mean, how do you get up every day? I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody wants to win.
Right.
But there's a difference in I want to win and I want to win. There's a difference.
Right.
There's a difference. There's a difference when I got to win because we got to make up a game and a half here. Mm-hmm. And we got a 9-game lead. If we lose tonight, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So the only thing they're playing for now is to have the time off. And that didn't work last year. So who knows?
Right.
The Dodgers right now have the best record in baseball. Not by much, but they do. I will say this. The Angels haven't had a lot to be thankful for this year, but their reliever, Ben Joyce, threw a pitch 105.5 miles an hour this week. So he's right up there with and that's the other thing. Aroldis Chapman was throwing the ball 101 miles an hour on Washington last night, and they scored 4 runs off of him in the 9th inning, beat him in the second game of the double.
Well, you made a remark while we were watching the games the other night. The kid, you throw hard enough, and the guy just makes contact. And you make good enough solid contact at 101, the ball's going to – the pitch.
We saw the home run. The guy barely hit – the pitch was 101, and the kid barely made contact, and the ball went 394 feet.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look at the schedule real quick. And again, it ends on the 29th. But I just did this last year because it's it's not always how many games you're going to win, but who you play. Now, Baltimore, today they lost to the Rays at home. They go to Boston tomorrow night for 3 against the Red Sox. Then they have to play 3 at Detroit. Then they're home 3 with San Francisco, 3 with Detroit, and then they're at the Yankees for 3. That's big. Then they're at 3 at Minnesota. So those last 6 games are tough, especially Minnesota still trying to make the playoffs.
Right.
The Yankees are playing the Cubs today, and I think the game's tied or it's close. Then they play 3 at home with Kansas City, 4 at home with Boston. Then they go to Seattle for 3, the Athletics for 3. We'll see. The Athletics are playing spoiler.
Yeah.
Then they come back with the 3 games with the Orioles at home, and then 3 with Pittsburgh, and that ends their season. So the Yankees have a very favorable schedule, I think, to win that East. The Central, Cleveland is playing the Dodgers tonight. And then they have 3 at the White Sox. Then they have 4 at home with Tampa Bay, 4 with Minnesota at home. And then they go to St. Louis for 3, back home with the Reds for 2, and 3 with the Astros. So they play a lot of their games at home. Cleveland does down the stretch, and that's going to help them a lot. Kansas City, They're playing Minnesota today. Then they have to play the Yankees in New York for 3, at Pittsburgh for 3. Then they're at home with Detroit for 3 and San Francisco for 3. And then they're at Washington for 3 and 3 at Atlanta. So their schedule's not terrible. Minnesota has, they're playing Kansas City today at Kansas City. Then they have 3 with the Angels at home and 3 with the Reds at home. That's a chance for them to pick up some ground. Then they go to Cleveland for 4. Then they go to Boston for 3. They're home 3 with Miami and 3 with Baltimore. Houston is playing Arizona at home today. Then they have 3 with the A's at home, 3 at the Angels, 3 at San Diego, 4 at home with the Angels, and 3 at home with Seattle, and then 3 at Cleveland. So if I would think Houston, if they go to Cleveland with the lead in the West, they won't have to worry about beating Cleveland at all. Before we get to the National League, we'll have a word from our sponsor. The Cubs no-hit the Pirates Wednesday night. They had a combined no-hitter.
We don't have a sponsor, YouTube, if you're out there. It's not sponsored.
I'm the sponsor. Yeah, it's me and my Social Security. Imanaga pitched 7 strong innings, and then 2 relievers finished up. Right. Wednesday night, Tatis came back off the IL for San Diego, and in his second game on Wednesday night, he hit a walk-off single to win the game for him. And Matt Chapman for the San Francisco Giants signed a 6-year deal for $151 million. Now, he is one of the best fielding third basemen in baseball, still. Excellent third baseman. And in the last 2 months, he's hit about 275, which isn't bad. Now, back to our regular program. In the National League West, with the schedule, Arizona is playing at Houston tonight, and then they have 2 with Texas at home, 3 with Milwaukee at home. Then they have 3 at Colorado, 4 at Milwaukee, 3 at home with San Francisco, and 3 at home with San Diego. So Arizona has a pretty decent schedule if they can capitalize on it. San Diego is playing at home with San Francisco today. Then they play 2 at Seattle, 3 at San Francisco, 3 at home with Astros, 3 at home with the White Sox, and then they have to play 3 at the Dodgers and 3 at Arizona. Their last 6 games, away at the Dodgers and at Arizona. And that matters. It matters. It's away or at home, it matters. Now, the Dodgers are playing Cleveland tonight in L.A. Then they play the Cubs at home for 3. Then they go to Atlanta for 4, Miami for 3. Then they have 3 at home with Colorado and 3 at home with San Diego, and then 3 at Colorado. So 6 out of their last 9 games are with the Colorado Rockies. You would think they'd win 4 of them.
Right.
I put the Cubs down here, but I'm not going to read it because I don't care. It's 47 games back. Yeah. They're still a little bit they're still in the wild card. They're about 7 or 8 games back, but they're not a factor, so I'm not going to even bother with the Cubs. So in the East, just Philadelphia is still playing for a bye. They're still playing for a bye. They have Miami today at home, and they're losing 10-0 in the 9th inning, or at Miami. I'm sorry. Then they have 3 at home with Tampa Bay, 3 at home with the Mets, 3 at Milwaukee, 4 at the Mets, 3 at home with the Cubs, and 3 at home with the Nationals. So they ought to be fine. Atlanta, they're playing Toronto at home today. Then they have a makeup game at home with the Reds tomorrow, rain out. Then they have 2 at the Nats in Washington. Then they come back home for 4 with the Dodgers. Then they go on the road again for 3 with the Reds, 3 with Miami, and come back home with 3 with the Mets, and then 3 with Kansas City. So their last 6 games are at home. The Mets have a gauntlet in the last week. They have the Reds today at home. Then they go to Toronto for 3. They're at Philadelphia for 3. Then they have the Nats for 3 at home. Then they have 3 with the Phils at home, 3 at Atlanta, 3 at Milwaukee. So they have
4 at home with Phillies, but that's okay.
Yeah, they have 4 at home with the Phillies and 3 away with the Phillies. So that's 7 games with the Phillies. And they have the last 6 games are away at Milwaukee and Atlanta.
Right.
They have 3 with the Nats at home. So they better capitalize on them.
Yeah, that's what I was telling people. I was like, the Mets have a tough last month.
That last 3 or 4 weeks, that last 3 or 4 games, last 10 days or so is going to be. Of course, a lot of these teams that have these away games, it depends on whether the teams they are playing for something. That always means something also.
Right.
Just a little bit of trivia. I found out that the shortstop who played the most games at shortstop, 2,709 games at shortstop, Omar Vizquel. He's played more games at shortstop than any other shortstop, and there's been a lot of great shortstops over the years. Of course, you had some shortstops like Cal Ripken and that moved to third base.
Right.
So, they move. Once they slowed down a little bit, they moved. Omar stayed there. And you got to admit, he wasn't the biggest hitter in the world, but that guy could field his position.
His numbers prove he should be in the Hall, but there's outstanding circumstances that's why he's not there.
Yeah. Shohei, going into tonight's game, I believe he has 45 home runs and 46 stolen bases, trying to go to 50-50. I was on MLB the other day, and they were some of the guys were poo-pooing it and saying that the stolen bases don't mean as much as they used to. It should be an asterisk because the bases are bigger and you can only throw over a couple of times. I look at it this way. The players didn't make the rule.
Right.
You have to play with what you got.
Right. Right. The asterisk thing, everybody knows if you care enough about the stats, right, of the game, you know what the rules are played with at the time. You know if it's a dead ball era, a live ball era. You know the mound was higher, lower, whatever.
Exactly.
You know the era that you're looking at, those stats.
Bob Gibson.
So hard to compare generations of baseball. It's just different generations. They play
different equipment, different in every sport, different equipment. The people are different sizes.
Right.
I mean, but Bob Gibson was so dominant for several years. They actually lowered the mound because of him.
Right.
1 inch. They lowered it because of him. And here again, when I'm kidding around or bad mouthing somebody and making fun of them, because I have a good sense of humor and I like to make fun of people, because people have been making fun of me for a long time. But anyway, I had a little girl ask me in Sunday school the other day, Mr. Mike, where does your forehead end? Not bad for a second grader to come up with that one.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I call him off again, on again Finnegan, because he's blown a few saves for the Nationals. This young man saved 2 games for Pittsburgh against Pittsburgh yesterday for the Nationals in a doubleheader. He has 36 saves. He's third in the major leagues of the saves. The Nationals are first in the major leagues in stolen bases. There are a few things they're doing right.
Right.
Anyway. The Friday night football game from Brazil, the NFL game from Brazil, it was on Peacock, had 14 million viewers. I saw that this morning. They're so happy with that. They're talking about streaming more games. All the major sports are looking at streaming more games because people pay for that extra and they get extra money. So since there were 14 million, they said the only game that had NFL game that was streamed that had higher viewership was the playoff game last year between Kansas City and Miami. And of course, was it Amazon Prime or whatever it does? They have the Thursday night games. So, that's all the Thursday night games are streamed. But anyway, I'm waiting for more and more games. And, I'm not going to pay extra for the streaming. I pay
I just found it like with baseball, it's just so many games. I don't know if that's viable. I pay for the package deal, which is not bad, but well, I actually get it for free now, but it's got its drawbacks because you can't watch. I get blacked. I have not watched the Mets Red series because it's blacked out to me.
I've seen, and I got to see them. I got to see. I was watching some of the NFL, but I was watching some of the Nationals getting beat. So I watched some of the Mets and the Reds. They've been playing. They played on MLB today.
Well, I would have got to see that, but
I get MLB.
I was laying down, trying to recuperate. It's the only drawbacks. Now it's free to me. It's not as bad, but those streaming services, that's the future of cable. Cable's going to die, and streaming services are going to be where it's at. So they're just getting people ready for it.
Yeah, I guess everybody be streaming, and I have no idea how that works. But anyway, that's about all I have for today. I just there weren't a whole lot of, outside of the McNeil injury, nobody. I looked up injuries, and there was a lot of people coming back and going into rehab and stuff like that. Scherzer, the other night, pitched in the minor leagues, and in 3 innings, he didn't give up a hit. So maybe he'll come back and pitch for Texas. I don't know. But they talk about he wasn't going to pitch the rest of the year. But you know how Scherzer is. If he says, I'm going to pitch, he'll pitch. I'm just the schedule's interesting. So now each week we'll have the schedule broken down and the standings, and we'll see where everybody is. I just don't see any of the teams that are like the Dodgers. They're 5.5 up on 5 up on San Diego and 6.5 up on Arizona. That's a lot to make up in 3.5 weeks. And I don't think either team's going to do it. I don't see the Dodgers completely collapsing. They've got too much talent for that. Mm-hmm. They don't. I mean, a lot of their pitchers are hurt, but they have too much talent. The other thing, they were talking about the Orioles, that they have Westberg and 2 of their pitchers that there's a possibility they may be back for the playoffs. And so they're going to make the playoffs. So if they make the playoffs and they get some of these players back, they might be a force to reckon with in the playoffs.
Right.
But they're not hitting. They're not hitting. Jackson Holiday is not hitting. And the guy that's really having a tough time this last month is the catcher.
Adley Rutschman.
Yeah, Adley Rutschman. He is having a he is having a rough time. Gunnar just got out of a slump. But Kowser's on again, off again. And the other thing is, too, they're Mountcastle, who they thought was going to come back off the IL Monday or Tuesday of this week, had a setback. So he's not come back. And that hurt them in the last 2 games because the 2 gentlemen they had playing first base, each of them made an error, which cost them some runs.
Yeah, are you talking about that hard hit ball to hit off the guy's heel of the glove?
That was one of them. Then it happened again yesterday.
That's a tough one to swallow.
Well, that was a bad hop.
Not only that thing was a rocket, 100 and some miles an hour.
The same thing happened yesterday. Another
top spin. It was a left-hander, so you become the hot corner. That was
But what happened yesterday, son? The ball was hit to the first baseman. He knocked it up in the air. The pitcher's going to cover the bag, and he threw it over the pitcher's head into the wheel well.
That's different.
The camera well, because he slipped when he threw the ball. I mean, everything's working against him in these last 2 games. And today, look, folks, that schedule right there that I read off to you, those teams that have to play Tampa Bay, they're no pushover.
Right.
They don't score. They're the worst team in the league with runners in scoring position. They're the worst by far. Worse than the A's, worse than the White Sox. Can you imagine? They're worse than the White Sox with runners in scoring position, but they pitch and they play defense. They have 5 players on their team that can play multiple positions in the field. So he can move people around.
Yeah, that's what they like.
Against Baltimore yesterday, the second baseman played the whole game, and in the 9th inning, they pinch hit. for the first baseman. So the second baseman went to first, and another guy went in at second. Because the second baseman could play first, second, or third, and the outfield. So they had 5 players like that. They could move around. And so anybody playing Tampa, don't sleep on them, because that team, they can pitch, and if they can stay in the game, anything can happen. But after looking at the schedule, I feel pretty good about my prediction about the Yankees and the Phillies. The Yankees bullpen leaves a little bit to be desired, but they got the Gill kid back, and he pitched a great game the other day. And the Phillies, now Nola got smoked last night, but that happens to everybody. And the Phillies, it's hard for them with that big lead they've had for so long to keep getting up for everything. And they had a bad throw at the plate. I think it was the shortstop. The runner was coming in from third, and shortstop threw the ball to the backstop. But anyway, I mean, it's getting to that time of year. People are getting tired.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going out, you got a 7-game lead and you're pitching. You just want to get the day over.
Yeah.
It's like,
and the other thing is too, like they were talking about McCann, the catcher for Baltimore, and he got hit in the face earlier, and he made the comment after the game the other night when they were interviewing him, because he got a hit that helped him win, and he said, "There's not any place on my body that doesn't hurt." But at this time of the year, that's the way it is when you're a catcher.
Right.
So there are a lot of people like that.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's fun time right now. Like I said, I've been either on the road or at a function or something the last few days, and haven't been able to enjoy it the way I would like to. But this time of year, football, baseball, everything's going on.
Yeah, and that's why I wore my Virginia stuff today, because they came back and beat Wake Forest last night.
31-30. So two games down. That's 2 games. If you want to make the bowls, you got to win those 2 games if you want to play the bowl.
Yeah.
So now they just got to find 4 more wins somewhere. So, but anyway, we go back to baseball. But NFL full swing this weekend. Another wild week in the WNBA. And it's fun to say that about the WNBA when nobody cared about it a year ago. So,
well, Angel Reese got hurt.
Oh no, I did not know that either.
I saw it on the internet the other night, and I've got to look it up to see. I saw it last night.
Oh, that sucks.
She came up. She said she was hurt, and she'd be out.
2 big rookies out.
Yeah, her and the Brink girl that played for the Sparks in LA.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of good sports right now. A lot of good sports. I just want to add to all of that with knowing what teams are playing and all that stuff. They still got to play the games. It's always nice to go over them. And like I said, I just want to reiterate, even those teams you feel like they got the 8-game lead, 7-game lead, 5.5-game lead, just pay attention to how they're playing to end the season, because I think it's a great carryover, a sign going to the playoffs, especially if they got a week off before they play their first game. I don't know how to get around that to not be flat, because baseball, once you're in a groove, you want to play that next game. You get done with game on Tuesday, you can't wait for Wednesday night's game to start. You just went 4 for 4, and then you got to wait a week. When they added that last year, I didn't like that at all. As football, you can rebound a little bit, a little rest. Some people.
Well, I mean, football is such a violent sport that week off helps you physically. Forget if it can help you physically, it will help you mentally and emotionally.
Right.
Your body feels better. But in baseball, yeah, you might be sore and you might be hurting, but baseball is, out of all the sports, baseball is so much about timing.
Yeah, and also
especially hitting, shooting a basketball, hitting a baseball, hitting a golf ball. Everything that's all about timing. And when you don't do it for a while, you don't use it, you lose it.
Right. Yeah, it's tough to replicate 98 with movement at batting practice. That's something you can't really duplicate. You got a pitching or your batting coach pitcher is throwing, half the distance at 58, 62. For you to just get your swings in, you go into the cage, and most of them were working on toss balls now. They're not even really full pitching, just working on keeping their hands on inside the ball. Quick to the ball. That's all they're working on. And just looking to see when you don't know who your next pitcher is either, or your next team, it's hard to get ready the way they do with trying to learn what pitcher they're facing to know to be ready for them. So a lot of that now, the analytics of our sport is
well,
real.
when you're a pitcher and you're pitching every 4 or 5 days, and then you pitch, and you have 3 more games for the season to end, and then you don't pitch for another 5. Now it's 8 days instead of 5. And and it's a whole different. Everything's thrown off. Everything is thrown off. You're out of sync, and it takes you a few innings to get back in the groove. And that's what happened with those teams. The biggest problem with the teams that had the time off, they couldn't hit. They couldn't score. They couldn't score any runs.
Right. Yeah, that was huge last year. You could just tell that week off was just, I don't know if you could tell. To me, it looked like it, but they just won't. The vibe wasn't there. And the other teams, you got to remember too, they're on a high because they just won a series. So they got momentum, and you're playing flat.
They all, except for one team, they all swept that first series, so they didn't use all their good pitchers.
Right. Yeah. So they were ready for that next series, just as ready if they didn't play that week. But they got to play and stay in time and in a rhythm. So that I don't know. We'll see. That's something that we'll continue to look at, talk about. What teams are going to get those buys, what 2 teams. So it's the top 2 teams, if I remember correctly, because the bottom 4 got to play each other. So, but yeah, we gotta look at that and just continue to talk about that. But you got anything else for us, Dad?
Well, there was a comment last week when we were talking about how the Nationals offered $300 million to both Harper and Soto, and they turned it down to go somewhere else. And there was a comment about it was so much of that money was deferred. Well, first of all, that's what a lot of people are doing now. The Dodgers proved that. And the second thing is $300 million is still $300 million. I don't care how much of it's deferred; it's still $300 million. So, I mean, I just wanted to make the point that.
Well, Dad, $300 million 10 years from now doesn't go as far as $300 million today.
Maybe and maybe not. We don't know what
It was a joke. It's still $300 million. It's going to go pretty good ways.
I think I could make it. I might make it to next Tuesday to Walmart. My Yogiism this week is not comical. It's truth. Yogi was asked when he was managing the Mets. He was asked by the New York Press, what makes a great manager? He said, great players. And that's.
And on that.
Your wagon only goes as fast as a horse pulling it.
That's right. So we're going to leave everybody on that, and hope everybody enjoy the games this week. Even if your team's not playing, watch the young players they brought up. If you're still watching them, watch the young players on the other team. Watch the veterans, that might be, their last season. Votto being gone, which had a great interview if you didn't see it on ESPN this week. And, it's still a lot of baseball to watch, a lot of history to be made, even on the teams that are not doing as well. So
yeah, I don't watch Mad Dog Russo much because he gets on my nerves.
Right.
He only is loud. But he was interviewing Votto, so I turned it on. He and the lady that works with him that knows so much about baseball. And so Votto was there, and he just had an old T-shirt on, and he was doing the interview. And while they're talking, he takes the T-shirt off and puts on a white dress shirt, and then bends down and puts on a wig and comes back up and he said he's going to be Mad Dog and take his job.
Yeah.
He started doing Mad Dog on there. It was funny. It was very funny. If he doesn't get a job in broadcasting, something's wrong because the guy.
Oh, you know he will. He knows
he's a natural. He is a natural,
and he knows his stuff. I mean, he loves the game. He loves the history of the game. He loves the players on the field. He's just a baseball guy. He's a baseball guy. We need him somewhere in the game. But with that being said, we're going to leave you with that. Watch the games. Enjoy the last part of the season. And until next time, like, share, subscribe if you haven't, please. Leave a comment. Please leave a question for Pop or I. But, please leave one for Pop or a comment for him. And until next time, see ya.